Good morning, friends. We are discussing data protection issues and challenges during this short interaction. First of all, I congratulate Galter for having organized this particular program. And unfortunately, I have not been able to be physically present there, but I'm happy to be at least contributing something to the conference by adding my thoughts on this important issue. The Data Protection Act has been in place now and rules have been notified, but the user organizations like the companies are confronted with certain doubts. Most of the time, the CISOs or the persons who are at the implementation level, they are convinced that we need to start working on DPDPA, but the top management is still not fully convinced. So therefore, there is a certain level of difficulty which the professionals are facing. And one of the issues obviously is, should I start compliance measures today or wait for some more time? Because there is no data protection board still till today. There is time anyway up to 13th May 2027. And also we know that there is a Supreme Court challenge on DPDPA by many parties asking for certain changes and also for scrapping the entire act as unconstitutional. You may be aware that we as FDPPI, Foundation of Data Protection Professionals in India, have applied for intervention in this particular case in the side of defending DPDPA on behalf of the government. We are waiting for the hearings to take place. But let me tell you that it is unlikely that there is going to be any change in the implementation timeline. At best, what it can do is that there was a rumor that government wanted to prepone the implementation. Maybe that the government may not do now, but wait till the dates which have been announced. Now, the second issue which people are concerned is about the current holding of the personal data, the legacy personal data. And the question is, should I take a fresh consent for all the millions of data which I am already having? And many times I don't even know how that data came into my custody. I have got multiple, data storage facilities. I've got data in every one of my employees' laptops. So all this, how did it come about? I myself do not know. Now, what should I do with this? Now, if I cannot get this fresh consent, then what? Should I scrap this data? Will my management permit me to scrap the data? Because we also say that data has got value, and FDPPA is in the forefront of saying that data valuation is part of the compliance, and it has to be represented as a note, at least in the balance sheet. Having said so, now if you are scrapping some of the data which is already there, it is like scrapping a financial asset of the company, and there has to be an appropriate process and reason for that which has to be established. Then we get into one of the critical areas of identifying who am I? That is, as an organization, am I a data fiduciary or am I only a data processor? If I am a data fiduciary, am I a significant data fiduciary? Or is it that whatever I am doing falls in the category of what we can call as a consent manager? These are the four different types of organizations which the DPDPA 2023 recognizes, and I have to fall somewhere in one of these categories. It's also possible that I may be wearing more than one hat in these categories, in the sense that I may be a data fiduciary in some cases of my processing. I may also be a data processor in certain cases, and some of my processes may be critical in the terms of sensitivity of personal information processed, as well as the volume of data processed. So I may be considered a significant data fiduciary. So these are some of the discussions which have to take place in the companies today. And should I wait for the government to tell me whether I am a significant data fiduciary, or should I do it myself, is another important concern which the companies need to follow. Another issue which we as professionals in the middle level may face is that somebody will say that you already invested in GDPR compliance last year, you already are certified in ISO 27701 and renewed it in the 2025 version, then why should you again ask me to bother about the DPDPA compliance? Certainly, it's a good question to ask, but we must tell whoever asked this question, even if he's a director of your board, that GDPR applies to data which emanates from the EU. DPDPA applies to data which emanates from India. The two are completely different. ISO 27701 is a best practice, and it is geared to meet the requirements of GDPR, not DPDPA. Therefore, GDPR compliance or ISO 27701 compliance is not sufficient to meet DPDPA compliance. At best, they may help me in complying with DPDPA, and particularly even if I am using an alternate framework like DGPSI, Data Governance and Protection Standard of India, my earlier compliance in ISO, either 27001 or 27701, will definitely help. But I need to actually create new compliance systems under DPDPA and not rely entirely on my earlier systems. Okay. Now, if this is the situation, then what should I do now? Now, the first thing which any organization needs to do is discover your status. Now, that is whether you are a data fiduciary, data processor, significant data fiduciary, and so on. At least you have to eliminate the reasons why you do not consider yourself as a significant data fiduciary. Because if you don't eliminate this requirement, you need to appoint a DPO and you need to designate an external independent data auditor before time runs out, because not designating a DPO, not appointing an external data auditor and conduct a DPIA itself can become a non-compliance issue even if there is no data breach. Therefore, you should first of all discover whether you are a significant data fiduciary. Don't wait for the government. You please do a self-introspection. That is what DGPSI, the Data Governance and Protection Standard of India, suggests as a requirement. You have to do an impact analysis. Along with that, you have to identify yourself. Then, in case you are handling personal data, identify which part of that personal data you are handling falls under DPDPA. We call that as the DPDPA protected data, DPD. Okay, so with reference to the applicability clause of this act, please try to identify whether you are processing such data, and if so, is it sensitive enough? Is it large enough to consider yourself as a significant data fiduciary? If you want to err on the safe side, please consider yourself as a significant data fiduciary. Particularly if you are deploying AI in any of these processes, remember that AI risk assessment is always unknown and not complete. Therefore, AI risk is significant risk, and therefore anybody using AI will be considered as a significant data fiduciary, at least in the principles which FDPPI tries to promote. Okay. Now, it's possible that you may have multiple processes of personal data. In some processes, you look like a data processor. In some processes, you look like a data fiduciary. In some, you look like a significant data fiduciary. This is reality, and it has to be assimilated. And that is the reason why DGPSI actually has a system of process-based, compliance, and starting with creating an inventory of processes similar to ROPA, is the starting point for the DPDPA compliance. So please do that first and prioritize it. So designate a DPO data auditor if you are a significant data fiduciary, at least in one of the processes. Then create an inventory of processes. And when you create an inventory of processes, it will have associated data elements. Those associated data elements try to aggregate and create an inventory of DPD from the legacy systems. Now, along with that, create a system of classification which is commensurate with DPDPA. Don't go by the classification of data as you are following now, but try to do it in the requirement, as per the requirement of DPDPA. Follow DGPSI if you need any guidance. Now, as far as the new system, new data is concerned, that the prospective data which you are going to get from, say, 13th May 2027 onwards, you can create a separate system. Now, that system will be a clean system, and you should not have any problem in identification of DPD or classification of DPD and creating an inventory of DPD post 2027. And whatever new systems you install, please make it compatible to DPDPA and segregate the problem with the legacy systems into a separate bundle, because most of your legacy personal data needs to be scrapped. And if it is not to be scrapped, you should establish a legitimate need to retain and process it. So that is a different exercise. Allocate a different team for handling the legacy data, but in the meantime, create a new system. When you create the new system, establish a consent system with notices for different processes. Then each process owner, you please ask him to take care of what is required as consent for his particular process. Now, some of the key obligations you need to worry about is set up first the systems for protecting the data principals' rights, the right of access, right of correction, right of deletion, right to grievance redressal, and right to nomination. The existence of these subsystems is essential before you send out your privacy notice, because your privacy notice has to give links to these things. So you cannot get a consent before you are having an established grievance redressal system. If you do not have a grievance redressal system, please contact organizations like FDPPI. We will provide an assistance in external grievance redressal mechanisms through appropriate forums. Now, nomination is something which is new. You have to establish how you are going to do it. And if you are having minus data, then there is another perhaps a challenge which you have to do. But definitely there are ways of meeting those requirements. Put your efforts into that. Then set up a pseudonymization and anonymization systems. Then, of course, when you are trying to get a consent, ensure that your consent is legally sustainable. There has to be an appropriate authentication. Just a click wrap contract will not do. Now, after pseudonymization and anonymization systems, which we consider almost as mandatory, set up a data retention policy, data disclosure policy, and separately work on setting up a system for managing data processors, because any liability arising out of data processors non-compliance will be falling on the data fiduciary. So you may have to revise every one of your contract. You may have to call your data processors and conduct a training session for them on DPDPA. FDPPA even proposes that they should be separately compliant with the DPDPA. We have a framework called DGPSI for data processors separately, though it is not legally mandated that data processors should be DPDPA compliant. I, as a data fiduciary, would like to give my work only to such of those data processors who are aware of these compliance requirements and who can step into my shoes and think about my risks. So therefore, those data processors who have already undergone a DGPSI DP assessment are the persons whom I will choose to be my partners. So these are some of the major things which I would like all of you to work on, for which you may require to study the system of DGPSI, which I have referred to again and again. This is the Data Governance and Protection Standard of India. It includes DGPSI AI, which is applicable to the deployers of AI. You may accept it or you may even reject it, but I recommend all of you to study what it is and implement at least a modified system if you want. If you need assistance, call FDPPI's auditor to audit what you have already done and then proceed. Any negligence in implementation of DPDPA will definitely be considered as a point on which the directors of the company may be held personally liable for negligence, not necessarily under DPDPA, but under the Information Technology Act. Information Technology Act, Section 43, capital A, will continue to exist until 13th May 2027, and liabilities can be raised with the adjudicator of the ITA 2000, who will remain relevant even afterwards because the data principals, if they have suffered any loss, the legal remedy for them is only through the ITA 2000. So, friends, this is what I wanted to share with you today. Please take this with whatever precautions you need to do and be compliant to DPDPA before the time runs out. Thank you.